Welcome to Walking Tour France, a podcast dedicated to bringing you a new adventure somewhere in France with every episode. Each week, we'll travel to a different destination, from ancient ruins and stunning gardens to fascinating cities, historic landmarks, and hidden gems tucked away across this incredible country. If you're gearing up for your own trip, head over to northstartravelers.com, where you'll find gear recommendations to help you travel smarter, plus a full list of our other podcast shows covering destinations around the world. If you love discovering new places and planning your next adventure, follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leaving a positive review goes a long way in helping others find it. Now let's explore France. You're standing on the Champ de Mars, the long, open sweep of green that stretches through the heart of Paris's elegant 7th arrondissement. Behind you, the city hums with its usual restless energy. But in front of you, impossibly large, impossibly delicate for something made entirely of iron, the Eiffel Tower rises. Take a moment, really look at it. Because even if you've seen it in photographs 1,000 times, the reality of standing this close is something no image quite captures. The sheer scale of it, the way the lattice work seems almost lacy from a distance. And yet up close, you realize each beam and rivet is massive. The way the whole structure seems to reach for the sky with a kind of effortless confidence. This is the most visited paid monument on the planet. Nearly 7 million people a year make their way here, and yet somehow, right now, standing on this lawn with the tower above you, it feels like yours. Let's start at the beginning, not just of your visit, but of the structure itself. The year is 1887. Paris is preparing to host the Exposition Universelle, the Great World's Fair of 1889, which will celebrate the 100th anniversary of the French Revolution. The committee running the exposition has an idea, a bold one. They want a centerpiece, something that will announce to the world that France is not just a country of history and art, but of engineering, of industry, of modernity. A competition is launched, drawing over 100 proposals. Some involve a giant guillotine. Others suggest a lighthouse taller than any lighthouse that has ever existed. The winning proposal comes from the firm of Gustave Eiffel, a man who has already made his mark on the world, including work on the internal structure of the Statue of Liberty across the Atlantic. His engineers, Maurice Couchelin and Émile Nouguier, first sketched the design, and it is an architect named Stephen Sauvestre who adds those graceful arched bases you see at the feet of each pillar, and the decorative ironwork that gives the whole thing its visual warmth. Construction begins in January of 1887. 250 workers spend 2 years, 2 months, and 5 days to complete it. The entire structure is held together by 2.5 million rivets. And on March 31st, 1889, still warm from the workshops, it is finished. The tallest structure in the world at 300 meters. Nothing had ever been built this high. It would hold that record for 41 years until the Chrysler Building rose in New York. Not everyone was pleased. A group of Paris's leading artists and intellectuals published a furious letter, calling it a blot on the city. One famous nickname that stuck, though meant as an insult, was the iron asparagus. Gustave Eiffel himself responded with something close to a shrug. He believed the structure had its own geometric beauty, and history, as we now know, agreed with him completely. The tower was designed to stand for 20 years, then be dismantled. It was saved, almost accidentally, by science. Because Eiffel was a man of curiosity as much as engineering, he installed a small private apartment at the very top, we'll visit it later, and used the tower as a platform for meteorological studies, wind research, and early radio transmission experiments. Those radio experiments, in fact, are what ultimately persuaded the city of Paris to keep the structure standing. By 1909, when the tower was originally supposed to come down, it had become too useful a communications mast to remove. Walk toward it now. The tower sits on 4 massive pillars, each anchored at a different compass point. As you get closer, you'll pass through the open esplanade beneath the structure itself. And here, the scale becomes genuinely thrilling. Look straight up. The ironwork above you fans out like the ceiling of a cathedral. Except this cathedral is open to the sky, and the sky you can see through it is Paris. There are 4 entry points at the base, each beneath one of the 4 pillars. Head for the entrance, and if you've booked your ticket in advance, and I really do recommend doing that, because the queue without a pre-booked ticket can stretch for well over an hour in peak season, you'll breeze through security and find yourself at the foot of the staircase or the lift. Now, here's something worth knowing. The stairs are one of the best-kept secrets of this tower. If you're reasonably fit and the weather isn't hostile, take the stairs to the first level. There are 328 steps to the first floor, and then another 327 to the second. The staircase winds up the inside of the south pillar, and it gives you something the lifts don't, a sense of the structure itself. You can see the rivet work up close, you can look through the iron grid beneath your feet and watch the ground recede. And on the staircase, particularly outside peak hours, there's a quiet and a stillness that the lifts simply can't offer. You might even find yourself almost alone at certain moments in the middle of this extraordinary thing. Let's ride or walk to the first level. The first floor sits at 57 meters. Step onto it and you're immediately struck by what has been done here. This is no longer just a viewing platform. It has been thoughtfully transformed into something genuinely worth exploring. Beneath your feet in one section, there is a glass floor, and standing on it, looking straight down through the iron lattice to the tiny figures on the lawn far below, is one of those moments that makes even seasoned travelers pause and catch their breath. It is perfectly safe, but it doesn't feel it, and that's the point. The thrill of it is very real. There are exhibitions here too, telling the story of the tower's construction and evolution. Photographs and drawings from the 1880s line the walls, and you can see the original blueprints alongside the bold ambition of the engineers who drew them. Look for the early photographs of the tower under construction, the way it rose section by section through the Parisian sky. There is also a restaurant on this level, a casual brasserie-style spot called Madame Brasserie, which has taken over from the former restaurant here and offers a genuinely good meal with views that justify the inevitable premium. If you're after just a coffee or something light, it's a perfectly civilized way to take in the panorama without committing to a full meal. Before heading up, notice the ironwork around you more carefully. Those decorative scrolled arches at each corner, the ones you could see from below, are up close even more elaborate than they appear from the ground. They serve no structural purpose whatsoever. They exist purely to make the tower beautiful. Gustave Eiffel insisted on that. The man was not just an engineer. He was someone who cared deeply about what the thing would look like, not just whether it would stand. Now take the lift to the second floor. The second floor, at 115 meters, is one of the most beautiful viewpoints in Europe. On a clear day, Paris unfolds in every direction. To the north, the great white dome of the Sacré-Cœur sits on its hill in Montmartre like a distant wedding cake. To the east, you can trace the line of the Seine as it curves through the city. And if the light is right, you might just make out the glass pyramid of the Louvre. To the south, the long green ribbon of the Champ de Mars stretches away from you. To the west, the golden dome of the Invalides glints in the sun. This is the floor where most people choose to linger, and rightly so. The gift shop is here, yes, and if you want a souvenir that feels genuinely considered rather than purely commercial, the tower sells beautifully made pieces, including a limited edition rivet, cast from actual iron from the tower itself. It is a small, heavy, entirely unassuming thing, and it is one of the best mementos you could carry home. There is also, at one corner of this level, a small bar where you can order a glass of champagne. This is not an accident. The view from this height, with a coupe of champagne in your hand as Paris gleams below you, is precisely as romantic as it sounds. Allow yourself the indulgence. This is France. Now for the summit. From the second floor, you must take the lift. The stairs do not continue to the top. The summit elevator carries you a further 161 meters upward, and as you rise, Paris shrinks. The Seine becomes a silver thread. The streets become a fine grid. The whole city, impossibly dense, impossibly alive down below, becomes, from here, something almost abstract. Step out at the summit and the wind hits you first. At 276 meters, you are well above the rooftops of every building in Paris, and the air moves freely. On very clear days, you can see for 70 kilometers in every direction. But the most remarkable thing up here is not the view. It is the small room near the top, a reconstruction of Gustave Eiffel's private apartment. He had it built for himself, and Parisians were famously scandalized that he would use the top of this grand public monument as his own personal retreat. He could have rented it out for enormous sums. Wealthy Americans, it was said, begged for the privilege of spending a night up here. He refused. He used it to meet scientists and researchers, to conduct his experiments, to think. In September of 1889, Thomas Edison visited Paris for the World's Fair and made the journey to the top of the tower. Eiffel invited him into this apartment, and Edison gave him a phonograph, one of the great new inventions of the age, and wrote in the guest book that follows, "To Monsieur Eiffel the engineer, the brave builder of so gigantic an original specimen of modern engineering, from one who has the greatest respect and admiration for all engineers." There is something touching about that. Two giants of the industrial age meeting at the top of the world's tallest structure, trading admiration. The apartment has been faithfully restored with period furnishings and wax figures of Eiffel himself, seated with Edison as his guest. It is small, intimate, and entirely worth a few quiet minutes. As you stand here at the summit, it's worth knowing that the tower changes its shape with the seasons. Iron expands and contracts with temperature. On a hot summer day, the top of the tower is as much as 15 centimeters higher than it is in winter. The tower also leans very slightly toward the shade on sunny days, as the iron on the sun-facing side expands. It is a living structure, breathing ever so slightly with the weather. The tower is painted every 7 years or so, and it takes about 60 tons of paint. It has always been painted in shades of brown, currently a warm, earthy ochre that was chosen to complement the Parisian sky, applied in 3 subtly different tones, lightest at the top, gradually darkening toward the base. From a distance, this gradation tricks the eye into making the tower appear even more slender than it is. And at night, oh, the nights. Every evening after dark, 20,000 light bulbs spark to life, and for 5 minutes at the top of each hour, the tower sparkles with a light show that has become one of the most beloved spectacles in Paris. The sparklings, which has been running since 1985, is the work of a lighting designer named Pierre Bidot. 300 spotlights and those thousands of twinkling bulbs together create something that manages to be both grand and somehow intimate. Watching it from the Champ de Mars, surrounded by other people who have all fallen quiet, is one of the most quietly joyful experiences this city offers. If there is one piece of advice I'd give about visiting, it is this: come back in the evening. If you visit during the day, make a plan to return after dark, even just to stand on the lawn and watch the hourly light show. It is the same tower, and it is completely different. Take the lift back down when you're ready, though if you came up by the stairs, I encourage you to walk back down the same way. There's something meditative about the descent. The city slowly growing back to its proper scale, the sounds of Paris filtering back up as you approach the ground. Before you leave the tower's footprint entirely, take a few minutes to walk around its base. Look up at the 4 arches from different angles. Notice how the ironwork changes. How from directly beneath one pillar it reads as almost overwhelming engineering, and then from the center of the esplanade it reads as something almost feathery. The tower is generous with its perspectives. It rewards moving around it. And consider this, as you stand here one last time before walking away. When this tower was built, it was hated by a substantial portion of the city. The artists and writers who protested it were not cranks. They were thoughtful people who genuinely believed that an iron industrial lattice had no place in a city of stone and beauty and history. And they were completely wrong, not because art and beauty don't matter, they do enormously, but because the Eiffel Tower turned out to be art and beauty itself. The lesson it teaches, quietly, is about how hard it is to recognize a masterpiece when it first appears. The things that endure, the things that become part of a city's identity, part of the world's imagination, rarely arrive looking the way we expect. Now, before you leave this remarkable neighborhood, there is much more to explore within easy walking distance. Cross the Seine on the Pont d'Iéna, the bridge directly in front of you, and climb the short hill to the Trocadero Esplanade. This is the view you have seen in 10,000 photographs, and it does not disappoint. The tower frames itself beautifully from here, and the large, reflecting pool in the center of the gardens becomes a perfect mirror on still days. The Palais de Chaillot at the top of the hill houses the Cité de l'Architecture, one of the best architecture museums in Europe, with scale models of French cathedrals and centuries of building history. Allow at least an hour if that's your kind of thing. Back on the south bank, the Musée du Quai Branly sits just a few minutes east along the river, an extraordinary museum dedicated to the arts and cultures of Africa, Asia, Oceania, and the Americas. The building itself, designed by Jean Nouvel, is one of the finest pieces of contemporary architecture in Paris. Its exterior features a living green wall planted with tens of thousands of plants, and the interior organizes its 300,000 object collection in a way that is genuinely immersive. Even if museums are not usually your thing, this one earns a visit. A few minutes further east, the Musée d'Orsay occupies a beautiful old railway station and holds the world's greatest collection of Impressionist painting: Monet, Renoir, Van Gogh, Degas. If the Eiffel Tower represents what 19th century France could do in iron, the collection inside the Orsay represents what it could do on canvas. For a picnic? And there is no better place in Paris for an afternoon picnic. The Champ de Mars itself is an incomparable setting. Walk a few minutes south on the Rue Claire, a lively pedestrian market street, and you'll find everything you need: a boulangerie for bread, a fromagerie for cheese, a wine shop where the owner will spend 10 minutes helping you find exactly the right bottle at exactly the right price. Bring it all back to the lawn, find a patch of grass with a clear view of the tower, and let the afternoon go. For dinner, the neighborhood rewards those who are willing to walk a few blocks from the tourist density around the tower itself. La Fontaine de Mar, a short walk south on the Rue Saint-Dominique, is one of the most genuinely beloved bistros in Paris. The building dates to 1908, the red and white check tablecloths have been here for decades, and the menu is classic French: duck confit, cassoulet, sole meunière, followed by millefeuille or crème brûlée. Even President and Mrs. Obama chose to dine here during a Paris visit, slipping in to eat without ceremony among the locals. Reservations are highly recommended. For a special occasion meal, Le Jules Verne on the tower's second floor, which holds a Michelin star and is now helmed by the celebrated chef Frédéric Anton, offers one of the most remarkable dining experiences in the world. You are eating inside one of the great monuments of human history, with Paris laid out below you through floor-to-ceiling windows. The menu is a tasting experience of the finest French ingredients. Book months in advance, and if you want the classic Paris cafe experience on the opposite bank with a perfect tower view, the Carré on the Trocadero Square, a traditional patisserie and tea room with outdoor tables that look directly across the Seine, is one of those spots that rewards arriving early for a coffee and a millefeuille, while the morning light catches the iron. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Before you go, a few quick things: subscribe so you never miss a destination, leave us a positive review to help others find the show, and share this episode with someone who loves exploring France. And if you're hungry for more adventures beyond France, visit northstartravelers.com to explore our other podcast shows and browse gear recommendations for wherever your next journey takes you. Your support means the world and keeps these adventures coming. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next walk.